evening, everybody. Welcome to Meteorology Lab. Kind of a late start here. I accidentally had the stream set to private, so that's not going to work. So we restarted about 8:03, and I think we're back here. Had some remnants of some old MCS come into our area. These developed on the Texas Caprock, and they rolled into the area just after noon. Gave us a little bit of cool outflow and just a very tiny amount of rain. Here's what the charts look like this evening. Now we've done something a little bit different. We've outlined the moisture in green using the green shading. So down to the south, this is Texas here. And we can see the dew points in the mid and upper 60s in the east part of the state. But once you get into the Texas Panhandle, it gets quite a bit drier. 46 there at Amarillo and 46 in Guymon. So if we head up to the north, around Iowa, we can see another little feature taking place there. The chart is a little bit jumbled, but we can pick out easterly flow there in Minneapolis and easterly flow across northern Iowa. And that air mass is pretty cool. Looking at lots of 50s and lower 60s in that area. So we've got a front coming down, and where's the triple point? Looks like the moisture kind of outlines it. We just follow the moisture axis northward, and that gets us into that area. Looks like it's right around the Kansas City area. So just for a rough guess, cold front looks like it's extending southward from Kansas City there, and then up to the north. Looks like we have a warm front right in there, and then our low pressure system is right there around, looks like St. Joseph, Missouri. So we got a warm front over northern Missouri through central Illinois, and we don't have the severe weather that we were thinking that might be possible for Sunday out in this area here. Looks like the system actually kind of slowed down. So that kind of drew the threat a little bit further to the west for today. So as far as targets up north, it's going to be pretty much near that triple point area right there in that northwestward extent of the moisture field. So further south down into Oklahoma, it looks like the air mass has been kind of cleared out. There we have north and northeasterly winds. The leading edge of the cold air is about like that, from about Chanute down to Tulsa and down to Ardmore. Going even further south, tail end of the front extends into northwest Texas and down into the big country, something like this right there. So there's a northeast wind north of that front. So a boundary roughly from about looks like actually around Durant down to about Wichita or Mineral Wells, and then down to San Angelo. Caprock is dry, so no storms in that area, just 40s and 50s dew points at this time. All right, let's head to the other charts. Well, that's probably the story of the month right there. One marginal area that's obviously going to be in proximity to that warm front and to the moist axis. So we know this by looking at that surface chart there. So that is actually the playbook for what's happening this afternoon. So we can kind of visualize that moisture. It looks like kind of two moisture axes, one there and one a little bit further west around, or east around West Plains, Missouri. So it looks like this moisture axis intersects the front, roughly in that area right there. Now this also shows potential temperature. That's these dashed brown lines. And that gives us a good idea where to look for boundaries such as cold fronts and warm fronts. So right in here, we have a very strong contrast between warm air down to the south and cold air up to the north. So that gradient right there really stands out, and we can kind of look for those to find where there might be fronts. Now, that's not always the case. but it will pretty much make sure you don't miss any important details on the chart. So for example, right here, West Texas, see a very strong gradient right there. Some might be inclined to think of a cold front right in that zone right there. So it's definitely a good help. And let's head back to the other charts. There's where all the storms are. They are more organized up there in Missouri. Very little along that cold front in Texas, so we've got problems down there, probably strong cap and not quite enough moisture. Also looks like the forcing along the front is kind of weak. This is kind of a deformation zone. See how the wind field does that. So right in this area here, there's just not much in the way of convergence. Most of that is focused along that axis right here. But even there, not enough to really get anything going. All right, let's head to the upper air charts. Let me get this stretched out a little bit. Looks like the main polar front jet action is way up to the north there in Canada. We've got this one band of strong winds out there in Arizona. This is probably a wing of the polar front jet up there. In fact, yeah, we've got that system right there in Kansas City, so that matches up very well with that jet stream. So that low pressure area located right there. And then down to the south looks like the subtropical jet lurking down there in Mexico off the edge of the chart way down here. Looks like about 70 knots. Let me take a look at chat, make sure everything's okay. I know things were kind of messed up when we started the webcast. Okay, no problems there. This is the 700 millibar chart, and this is showing us some of the problems we have this evening. We've got a lack of a cap. You can see how the temperatures dropped. We were seeing about 8 to 10 or 11 Celsius last week, and now we're down to about 4 to 5. Okay, so we're less capped. So the reason we're not getting a lot of storms in Fort Worth, there's probably another reason. And now I'm starting to think maybe it's erosion of the moisture. Probably by that MCS that we saw earlier there. It appears we do have quite a bit of moisture on hand. We have 15s coming up to Del Rio and Fort Worth this morning. That's almost 60-degree dew point there. But it looks like that moisture was feeding that MCS that was rolling from west to east. Up to the north, we can see the new front coming southward. There it is right there. And the warm front somewhere back over Illinois like that. Then the thickness and isobars, we'll just take a quick look at this, and we can see the dominant pattern is a large high across the Great Lakes region. So it appears some of that cold air is spiraling around on the west side of that high. The frontal boundaries, something like that right there. And let's see what else is going on the chart. Looks like some cold air coming down the west coast right there. So maybe a front through California, perhaps. That's what I would be looking at on the charts out in the west part of the U.S. And looks like up north we're still generating quite a bit of cold air, but that's heading mostly into Quebec and the Maritimes. So that's becoming less and less of a problem. Actually, I'm sure this high right here probably broke off from some of that cold air. So yeah, I would say that is having an effect. In fact, let's look at the trajectories. This is the 4-day trajectories going backwards. I did one for Dallas, one for north of Salina, and another one for southeastern Missouri. And this shows the air mass source regions. For Dallas, the air mass appears to have originated over the Gulf, but you can see this curl here, indicating that we've got recycled moisture. And this is a good pattern for hazy weather, hazy and stagnant. Kind of the same story there for that parcel in Missouri coming from the Central Gulf. There's not any trajectories coming from the deep Caribbean there. And then up there in northern Kansas, trajectories are coming from the Great Lakes, and this one little trajectory came from the Hudson Bay region. So that explains a little bit of that cold air coming into Nebraska and Iowa. It's coming from the usual culprit area up there, the Hudson Bay region and the Hudson Bay vortex production zone. Okay, let's see here. We've got the camera up, so that's up and running. And let's check in on chat, see how things are going. Give me just a second and I'll get organized here. Ryan Toomey's joining us, and Fun with Tech. Sue M. Weather unstable in that area. Carl Burkhoff is here. Ryan Toomey's reporting 7 inches in the rain gauge since Friday afternoon. We got Rat from Tucson here, Willie Greenway. All eyes on the Gulf of Mexico coming up later this week. Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, 71 degrees, dew point of 64. Rat reporting 90s in Tucson, very sweaty weather in that area. Ryan is suggesting to hit the like button. Yeah, please do that. It is appreciated. And Shirley Keast, Michigan, 61 degrees and sunny. So we've got kind of a stagnant weather pattern here, and I'm really looking forward to getting that drone functional. We're going to have some fun with that. This one goes up quite a bit higher. So yeah, it is an upgrade. All right, let's check out the satellite there. See what's going on. Well, looks like nothing in the plains. This looks pretty depressing. There are some clouds coming across the central Rockies region. That's indicating that we're still getting a little bit of jet stream energy in that area. But out in the plains, it looks like the air mass has been eroded by dry air. So hardly anything as far as low clouds. You have to go pretty much all the way out towards Raton and Trinidad to find any good convection. This is the MCS that rolled through Texas overnight. So that right there, that's indicating why we don't have storms along that frontal boundary. The front, kind of in that area right there. That MCS pretty much chewed through all of the available moisture. So we'll take a look at the sounding and see if we see anything. And then down in the southeast U.S., lots of popcorn storms in that area. This is kind of a June-like pattern. As those get going, and here's a closer look. This will take just a minute to finish loading, so it's going to flash for a little bit. And this will show you the fascinating view of storms popping up in that area. So this is Mississippi and Alabama. Very zoomed in here, showing storms from about 3 or 4 p.m. to just about 20 minutes ago. And I'll give you one good cell to watch out here in this, where you see the mouse cursor. Yeah, you see that storm there, it gets going, and then look at this down here on the boundary. These get going. This is around Uniontown, Alabama. So it's a little bit of boundary interaction there. You can kind of see that boundary, and there's probably some very good moisture in that area helping to sustain those storms. So in a way, they are pretty random, but they are focused on subsynoptic boundaries across that area. And yeah, let's look at them on radar. I've got them pulled up. We'll look at the Columbus radar. So it definitely looks less impressive on radar than it does on satellite. And those storms that we were looking at, they were way down in this region here. So earlier, yeah, there's that cell cluster. That looked pretty good. But the problem is, you can see there's not much reflectivity gradient. The cells are pretty concentric. They're annular. The core is right there in the center rather than off on the side of the storm. This cell has a little bit of a gradient right there on the north side, so there may be a updraft area in that region. Let's do a cross-section through this thing. This is around the Uniontown Alabama area. And that's our storm. North is on the left side. So this doesn't have the kind of overhang that we see with southern plains storms. Typically we see a lot of that red lofted up to very high levels, and the storms, they have this overhang type structure. We saw this just a couple days ago, and you can see that this is a much different pattern. A lot of the higher reflectivities right down there on the ground near that lowest scan, and it just kind of goes away as you go up higher. You get lesser and lesser reflectivity. Everything is concentrated on that lowest couple of tilts there. However, these are pretty high storms. You can see they're well up above 40,000 feet. And what happened with this storm, let's check that out. Roll that forward over the past 30 minutes, and it just dies out. So these are very dependent on the availability of boundaries and upper air support and heating. So we've lost the heating, there's not much upper air support, and the boundaries are pretty weak. It's not like a big frontal boundary there, so not much to keep them going, and they should continue shutting down over the evening hours. So things have kind of a tropical appearance there, and yeah, Florida's been getting some of that action. And let's take a look at the water vapor. We haven't seen that in quite a while. This is water vapor imagery there. So this is showing us that where we have red, that's going to be either that pretty much tells us that radiation from the lower part of the atmosphere has successfully made it up to the satellite without being attenuated by moisture. And it also tells us that there's a lot of radiation. In other words, that radiation is infrared. It's heat. So this is very warm air mass across the Gulf of Mexico and across Old Mexico, and it's not being blocked by moisture. However, Florida, it's pretty warm there. However, they have lots of moisture. So the radiation is not making it up to the satellite, and we see it as kind of a cold, whitish texture. And then up to the north, what's going on up there? Well, this appears to be kind of whitish, indicating very little radiation making it to the satellite. So this is telling us that it's either very cold at the surface, so no radiation to start with, or it's being attenuated by upper level moisture. So it's very likely going to be the first one. It's very cool up there, and there's not much moisture to block any radiation up there. So this is pretty much a cold air mass as we see it on water vapor imagery. So this is very good for looking at weather systems and finding areas of strong vertical motion, especially, for example, transverse circulations, which are kind of ageostrophic, and they signal very strong circulation. So there's probably a little bit of that right there. This is indicating possibly a jet through that region, and looks like an upper level low possibly through that area right there, helping to support that surface system. And then out to the west we can see another jet stream coming in, another jet segment. And this is the area of lift that's possibly on the right side of that jet axis. Okay, and that brings us to for our forecast, we're going to start out with the high resolution rapid refresh, start with the short term, and see what things look like. Looks like the model initialized pretty well. These clusters showing up on the model data are about exactly where the storms are. So we roll that forward. That cluster across Texas died out. However, there's a strong area of storms down there in the lower Rio Grande Valley, and those persist until after dawn. That's pretty impressive for being so far south. So why would that be? All we have to do is go back to the upper level charts. You remember how I was talking about those Alabama storms? We were talking about it needs heating, it needs strong boundaries and strong upper air support. Well, they're getting upper air support down there. Look at that, 70-knot winds. Contrasts very strongly with 40-knot winds, actually 30 to 40 across North Texas. So that's helping to keep those things going. So if you're wondering how to forecast overnight convection, make sure you look at that upper level data, because that synoptic scale interaction really helps keep those things going. Okay, that's what's going on there in the short term, and now let's start looking more at the 2 to 3 day picture with the NAM. So what do we see here? It's important to start with the big picture. So what we see is high pressure across the Great Lakes, mostly the western Great Lakes, right in that region there. And this is having a huge effect on the flow of air across the northern U.S. So, yeah, we've got our boundaries there. Probably something like that. So this will probably continue to have a big effect over the next couple days in the Midwest and the part of the Mississippi River Valley. And then out to the west we see troughiness out in that region. See that thermal troughing out there? This is probably some sort of cold front or burst of cold air coming through California there. So that may, well, I was going to say that's going to cross the Rockies, but the upper level flow is kind of out of the southwest. So that may carry most of the energy up into the northern plains. All right, let's roll that forward, see what things look like over the next day or so. Looks like a little cluster of storms overnight there in Missouri where we have the better upper air support. And then I'll move into Illinois and Indiana overnight. And then tomorrow afternoon, looks like we've got that laggy frontal system finally moving into Illinois. And we've probably got a warm front across Indiana right there. See, I'm picking that out because of that closed isobar right there. That indicates to me probably a low right in that area. So I'll just put that low there. So this appears to be a very small scale system moving through that area. Indiana is along that warm front, and we've got moisture kind of flowing northward. So if we have enough upper air support, I think we've probably got the potential for maybe some severe weather in this area tomorrow. Okay, out west I can see a couple of thickness lines out here, there. Out here, there. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, this is probably that cold front coming through that area, heading into Arizona. Core of the cold air is across the lower, what's the name of that valley? San Joaquin Valley there. Okay, going into Tuesday, let's see what's happening on Tuesday. Yeah, some storms on the high plains of New Mexico there. We can see that high pressure is still kind of affecting things in the Great Lakes region. So then going into the afternoon on Tuesday, there goes that outgoing system moving through New York. So probably some storms up there in New York for Tuesday, moving up into Vermont. That high is still over the Great Lakes region, so that will be continuing to impact the weather in that area. Probably that front is pushing southward into Texas, north winds behind that, and that will push the precip south with it. Weather will continue to be tropical across Alabama and Georgia and Florida there. Out to the west, it appears that cold front continues to move eastward. But it does look to be pretty weak there, and I think the area where the strongest baroclinicity, the strongest low, the cyclone, I think we would find that up in this area right there. So I'm trying to think about where that'll emerge on the high plains around midweek, and yeah, there it is. Some storms pop up there, and we get the lee side troughing in that area. So that's where things get going around Wednesday into Thursday. So we're going to look up north for the best chase opportunities. There's Wednesday morning, southerly flow, the addition of heating. So probably by Wednesday we're looking at maybe South Dakota, up in that area right there. And also storms continuing to fire on the high plains of New Mexico there. And that brings us to the end of the NAM. Quick look at the upper air chart. There's all that troughiness out west. Overnight jet looking like that right there. Looks like a ridge moving into the central plains. But we've got this trough right here. This is a shortwave trough. This is tomorrow morning. And it appears it moves very slowly towards New Mexico. See, there it is by evening. So that'll probably help generate some showers in that area right there, south of the Four Corners. And then we kind of lose where that trough is, but I think maybe it's moving up something like that. So that may help to get some storms going, possibly in the panhandles on Tuesday. Things may be kind of active out in that area. And then it appears after that, I think that trough kind of recedes a bit, and the ridge kind of builds back in. See that right there? Yeah, the ridge is building back in. So a warm-up for the southern plains around midweek. And we will see most of the storm action moving up towards the Dakotas. Okay, GFS. Let's check that out. We'll pick this up around late in the week. Looks to be pretty active up north. South flow in the southern plains. And then Friday evening looks pretty quiet. We're developing a bit of a thermal trough, maybe a lee side trough right there in the western panhandles region. There's probably an outside chance of a storm somewhere, maybe just west or just east of there. This is on Friday. And then for Saturday, yeah, there's some good storms going in Kansas there. This is overnight, maybe a bit of an MCS. And remember, when we see an MCS at 12Z, we need to kind of look backwards about where that came from. It's kind of weird for storms to spontaneously develop at 12Z. That's like the convective minimum. So it could have generated from that right there north of Topeka, or maybe further down that inverted trough around Great Bend and Dodge City. So in other words, it looks like in Kansas it probably will be active for Friday. Then going into Saturday, very weak boundaries, very weak flow. So no favored targets really. There is some upslope across Colorado and Kansas there. So maybe something could pull together on the high plains of Colorado there. Yeah, there it is right there. Some stuff got going. Then for Sunday. Another frontal system coming south. There it is right there. High pressure right there over Manitoba. But things appear to be getting very active up there in the Pacific Northwest. This will continue to produce some showers probably in western Kansas again. Colorado, yeah, there's some upslope storms for Monday. And then towards the end of the period, I was seeing, yeah, here it is. This is where things are coming together up there. Looks like a major system, British Columbia, Alberta, up in that region. And we see thicknesses really fall off up there, and I think we've got a very potent Pacific front developing up in that region and coming into the plains. So that'll probably help to get things going around June 4th, June 5th, June 6th. This is what we've been lacking all through May, is a very strong Pacific system, and it looks like we finally have one. So there's the front. This is probably a warm front. So we're looking at Tuesday the 5th of June. So there's a lot of target possibilities here. Can't really pinpoint that at this time, but also with this very strong front, that means the upper level patterns are going to be pretty strong. So it looks like we're probably going to have some severe weather starting maybe in this area, and that'll gradually shift down the plains as everything pushes south there. Okay, that's probably about all I got there. I appreciate y'all watching. Let me take one last look at chat. It is, unfortunately, kind of a quiet evening. Electric Dog reporting cold and damp in northern Illinois. Raining good on the Iowa plains. Willie Greenway asks if those are multi-cell storms. Yeah, that's a good question. They are definitely multi-cells. It's what we call multi-cell clusters, very common in the summer in the southeastern U.S. So if you look for multi-cell clusters, that will show you a little bit about the structure on these storms here. Just put that into Google. Yeah, a couple good cells out there, but they're just not really doing a whole lot. Let's take a look at this one. This is over New Augusta, just east of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And even with that storm, you can see that there's just not overhang like we see on some of the strong cells, severe weather. Let me just put this in real quick. See if we can find a good example. Yeah, there's a good one. This is what you'll see with tornadic storms there. Very strong B-weir structure. And this is the updraft punching up into the up into the upper parts of the troposphere there. And we see precip develop in it and kind of fall out around the outside. So that's what's going on there. And there's an idealized picture there, and you can see that the B-weir corresponds very closely to the hook echo. There's another example there, pretty cool. So nothing like that going on today. This is definitely a non-severe storm, but likely producing quite a bit of rain there. All right, let's see, anything else? Let me take one last look at chat. Popcorn cells. Still ice on Hudson Bay. Wow, okay. Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris Tyne. Or Electric Dog, I'm sorry. No real chase weather. 56 Arvada, Colorado, from Mike Estwick. Showers in that area. Ryan Toomey's mentioning a weak system for the weekend coming up. And yeah, the tropical thing. Let me go back to that. Let me show you that. I can see a couple people left already, but sometimes we get a surprise, and we go back to some of the products, and we never. It gets kind of unpredictable sometimes. Okay, here's the GFS data coming in, and with this particular run, it appears they went a whole lot weaker on the intensity of the storm, and that's more in line with what we see climatologically. So let's roll that forward. Let me get my monitor up, give you the date up there in the top left. And if you look down here in the Gulf, there's our system. This is moving across Florida on the 26th, and then by the 27th, it's moving up there towards the Carolinas, and this is getting a little bit more consistent from what we've seen with the previous models, but the intensities are weaker. It doesn't look like a Cat 3 storm or anything like that anymore. This is more in line with a tropical depression or a tropical storm there. All right, Willie Greenway likes the overhang discussion. Electric Dog raining on the erupting lava in Hawaii. Michelle Curlan is joining us late. And Electric Dog waiting to the very end for that reason. Okay. Huge rainmaker. All right. I appreciate you all joining, and we'll see you all tomorrow. And we are going to be doing something interesting with Weather Brains tomorrow, so you might want to join for that. It may mean that we start a little bit late, but we'll just have to see how things work out. So we're going to be kind of simulcasting both to you and to them. All right. And now I think I can say goodnight. So take care, and let me get that music going. There we go. All right. Hope you all have a good evening, and maybe we'll get some storms here in the next several days, and we'll check that out in more detail. Until then, have a good evening.